but I'm not going to do that. I just want to quickly go across. I think we have, let's spend some time on Uttar Pradesh. We have with us Madhukar Jaitley. Siddharth Nath Singh joins us. Madhukar Jaitley, who's advisor to the UP government External Aided Projects Division. Samajwadi Party, KC Tyagi of the JDU. Welcome to talk about Bihar. RK Singh, former Home Secretary. He's joining us from Patna. Overall picture plus Bihar. Siddharth Nath Singh of the BJP. Welcome. Thank you very much. Good of you to join. Okay. Should we begin with UP or Bihar? Madhukar Jaitley ji. Let's begin with UP. Let's talk about UP first. I'd like to put out the graphics also as we talk about UP first. By the way, the average in Uttar Pradesh, I look at CVoto.org, India, Nielsen and Chanakya. The mean shows that the UPA gets 7 seats, the BJP gets 57 on a mean, from a conservative 46 to 52 of ORG. I think, I don't remember the exact number, I think Yashwant gives 52 or 57 actually, right? 54. Yeah, Yashwant's agency, CVoter gives 54, ABP Nielsen gets 46, Chanakya of course says 70 out of 80, right? What's the real variation? What's the story here? Is there much variation that you see besides Chanakya?
Actually, yes, Chanakya is seriously the outlier over here. Besides Chanakya, if you look at the other polls, I think they're fairly consistent. They're averaging to 50. The peak is 54, the least is 46.
Right.
I think the other factor I think most of the polls are consistent about is that the BSP, according to the polls, may not be the ground, but the BSP seems to be the biggest loser in the entire game here with about a single digit.
Yeah. I'll try and pull out the vote share, the overall vote share poll of polls also for Uttar Pradesh. But the vote share poll of polls says that the BJP will cross a figure of 30%. This is Congress, of course. Congress, is unimportant in this case, gets an average of 16%, propelled largely by an over-optimistic survey here. Some would say for the Congress party by the ORG India. But BJP is the story, it crosses 32%. Yashwant, how much did the BJP get during the Vajpayee era when it crossed, that mark? When it went into that 55-56 mark?
But the classical figure, Arnab, in UP is always 30%.
So 30%
if you are
threshold?
polling 30%, you will win about 40 seats in UP out of 80.
So 32%?
And after 30%, Arnab, every 1% gets you 5 seats.
Okay. So
after 30%, after you cross the threshold of 30%, every 1% gives you 5 seats at least.
So going by 32%, therefore, you cross the threshold.
50. You cross the 40 plus 10 is equal to 50.
Okay, so just for the record, what did Vajpayee get?
36.5.
Vajpayee got 36.5 UPA.
1998, BJP 36.5.
But
BJP alone.
Yeah, but that is including Uttarakhand 5 seats.
Okay, fine. Madhukar Jaitley, do you have much hope? I mean, given the BJP's performance here, this election, Madhukar Jaitley ji comes in the backdrop of Muzaffarnagar. Is this polarization at play? Is polarization as strong maybe as it was in 1991, which has led to the significant impact in terms of votes for the BJP? Mr. Jaitley, start with you.
You see, my only worry is that all the exit polls that you are trying to combine together and say that one has said X and the other has said Y.
Right.
I don't know whether anybody of them is willing to take the accountability for what they have tried to come forward with. In any of these kinds of things which are done, the surveys, etc.
Right.
I mean, even in the case of share market, there is a rider at the end of the day which is written below the application that these investments are subject to market risk. You go to buy a cigarette packet. Even in that it is written that cigarette smoking is injurious to health. But despite that, if you want to buy, you can buy that cigarette packet.
No.
But here nobody is willing to say that, no, let me complete.
Sir, we are not selling cigarettes here.
Let me complete.
Sir, we are not selling cigarettes.
I am not saying.
And by the way, if you are asking, I have a pollster here with me. No, 1 second. There is Yashwant Deshmukh of CVoter. You are asking him within a range of probability. He is sticking his neck out. So is ORG India. Everybody is.
I can always give one statutory warning that the parties which are trailing in the exit polls are injurious to their health. That is one statutory warning. But I will repeat it again. I will repeat it again.
Perfectly correct.
The parties which are trailing in the exit poll figures are always injurious to their health. Number one. Number two, the same parties, when we predict they are forming the government in Uttar Pradesh, winning a mandate, they find the exit polls perfectly healthy.
Okay, Yashwant.
2009 and 2004, if they are not correct, then how can this be correct?
Well, there was another election in 2012 in Uttar Pradesh where exit polls said that a certain young leader of a certain party is going to be the chief minister of Uttar Pradesh.
Precisely, I think so.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So at that point of time,
I'm not talking about
the
names.
problem is
listening to you at that time.
the problem is
I came into the discussion.
the problem is
Sir, what I'm saying is, let us be very logical. Sorry,
Yes.
sir. I'll tell you one thing, what we are doing in our election analysis. We are trying to extract emotion away and go with the facts. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Jaitley, please. Mr. Jaitley, we are not selling cigarettes out here. In fact, this is a no-smoking zone. I want to get Siddharth here. Mulayam Singh Yadav, your leader, Madhukar Jaitley, was speaking about 50 seats in UP, right? Yeah. Right? Your best ever performance was in 2004. You got 35. And you got only 26-27% of the vote. No, one second. So 1 minute.
Don't count your eggs before they are hatched, my dear. Don't count your eggs before they are hatched. Just have patience till 16. Everybody, so many people will be surprised on all the people here on this panel.
Arnav,
will have surprises. Don't worry.
Sir, I'm neither hatching eggs nor counting chickens. Just a minute. Siddharth Nath Singh is responding to you, Siddharth. I see a very volatile Madhukar Jaitley here, disbelieves the numbers, questions the exit
Arnav,
polls in a fairly predictable manner. Why don't you respond to it?
I find Mr. Jaitley's argument. I find Mr. Jaitley's argument a little bizarre when he says, the pollsters don't. At the end of the day, they should take accountability. The problem in this country, the governments don't take at the end of the day accountability for anything which goes wrong. So why blame the pollsters? I think what we are seeing in UP, Mr. Jaitley, there is a trend, and the trend is showing that there is a huge, in 2 years, there's a huge anti-incumbency.
That's right.
You have, unfortunately, through the Muzaffarnagar and otherwise also, did not talk about development. You thought about giving doles like laptops and other various things. There was no governance on the ground. There was a communalization which was being spread as a state policy. Attached with that has been the central government's anti-incumbency, and we were able to market ourselves Mr. Modi as an icon for good governance and development. Here and there during the elections, little things did come up, unfortunate, but overall we were focused, and the voters were focused on development and good governance, and I think that's gone well with the voters, and the voters have voted for good governance and development.
Okay,
so that's the reality.
Gentlemen, I would
Perhaps
like to
you have another 3 years to improve on it.
I would just stay on, gentlemen. I want to ask our panelists a sense of how they see the Uttar Pradesh number.
For good governance and development.
Okay,
so that's the reality.
Gentlemen, I would
Perhaps
like to
you have another 3 years to improve on it.
I would just stay on, gentlemen. I want to ask our panelists a sense of how they see the Uttar Pradesh numbers. Let's start with you, Nirja. Let's start with Nirja, and we'll go across in any order. Let's debate Uttar Pradesh, whether these numbers are realistic. And also, just a small question, Yashwant, here, which is asked very often, and I'm not a pollster, but I always ask them. It is said that there is something called a Bradley effect, where in the case, I think in the United States, when, everyone was hoping that, there was expectation that people from a certain community would be voted in, polls would say yes, but eventually when things were combined, the numbers gave you a completely different story, that people don't reveal essentially who they are voting for, and there is a feeling that the minorities and certain sections, weaker sections, are not very vocal very often in terms of their real voting preferences. I'm just adding that as a caveat. Can it work in Uttar Pradesh? Nirja, and then let's open it up, the Uttar Pradesh debate, starting with Nirja.
I think the mean number you've taken, 50, I think is a possibility because I've visited that state and I saw the kind of enthusiasm for BJP.
Mean is 57, by the way.
Mean is 57. So say around 50, I would certainly,
Around 50.
45 to 50, I would certainly not be surprised at all.
You would.
But you see, what you also saw apart from the anti-incumbency and unhappiness with the Samajwadi Party regime,
Yes.
you saw an underlying Hindu-Muslim divide of the kind that was seen in the Ram Janmabhoomi time. That was overt, this was covert, and in Western UP particularly, people said, you think development is the issue? No, it's the Hindu-Muslim that's the real issue here today. So people talked about it. Therefore, the Jats voting as Hindus rather than on the caste lines.
Yes.
So I wouldn't be surprised that if that is the kind of number that we see for BJP.
A question here, that in 2009, the Muslim vote deserted the Samajwadi Party in favor of the Congress.
To some degree, not entirely.
To some degree, but to a significant degree at least.
In a particular belt in UP.
In a particular belt. So the same question goes to both of you. You can pick it up. That this time, could that happen in favor of the BSP? Because the ground reports were talking about it, but I haven't found that strongly reflected in any of the polls except ORG India, which in terms of vote share gives 24+% to the BSP.
There are two things I'd like to point out. One, in 2009, a certain section of the Muslim vote went to the Nehru Gandhi family for the first time since the Babri Masjid demolition.
Yes.
They went back to it. They have been very disappointed with the Congress and they've moved away this time.
Yes.
You could see Muslim disaffection with the Congress even in Varanasi, where Ajay Rai may well finish third because of that. The other thing is vote to seat conversion in UP is very treacherous. I spent a month in that state. In Western UP near Muzaffarnagar, Muslims were fed up of this SP and moving towards the BSP. As you move further east, the level of Muslim alienation from the SP wasn't as prevalent. In Purvanchal, I would argue the majority of Muslims would probably have stuck to Mulayam. So the BJP did very well in the first round in Western UP in the Muzaffarnagar belt. As it moved to the other belt, it actually lost before picking up again. So each sub-region, there are 5 sub-regions in Uttar Pradesh, has its own dynamic.
But the impact of this was so big. Anyway, no, but what I mean,
which we imagine it did.
No. But let me explain it with a caveat. You know the states better. He knows the mathematics better. But when this Muslim vote went for the Congress went boom from 14+% to 24+% in 2009, and it was that which got the Congress to, I think, 21 seats. This time, where is that boom effect going? Or is that boom effect not going? After them, I'm coming back.
Effect saturated because of Aam Aadmi effect.
No, just a thought.
And apart from that, really speaking, most of the Congress, the Muslim votes have been divided into equal parts.
You say that in the backdrop of Muzaffarnagar, that there is no going to be no consolidation of the vote?
Muzaffarnagar had an impact in the Muzaffarnagar region. It did not have an impact further east.
It did not have an impact further east. Sunil,
Muslims have stayed with the SP in a large part of UP.
My wife comes from Kanpur. I travel around UP. One thing which we are all forgetting this time is that for the first time I was hearing auto drivers and everybody else saying, बड़ा इलेक्शन में हम मोदी के लिए देंगे, छोटा इलेक्शन में हम डिसाइड करेंगे किसको देना है. For the first time in UP, people were looking at the Lok Sabha election as who do they want in the center and who do they want in the state could be very different. And we are missing that main point.
Navika, and then we are coming to you, and then we'll go to Bihar next.
You see, all the polls that we've seen, they've given a range of 6 to 13 to Mayawati, which means somewhere the erosion of the Dalit vote has happened for her, and somewhere the erosion of the Muslim vote, or the Muslim vote which was expected to come to her hasn't quite come.
Also, she has
she's always been a silent crusader. Her numbers have very often proved everybody wrong. So the real thing to look at in Uttar Pradesh would be the real Mayawati.
In 2009, Mayawati was in par.
I will just support your argument with the empirical numbers, Navika. You are absolutely hitting it right on the head. There are 2 facts about Uttar Pradesh. First, in 2012, when Akhilesh Singh Yadav swept the election in Uttar Pradesh, the gap between Mulayam and Mayawati was only 3%. Right now, we are staring at a gap of 10% between the leader and the runner-up. Average gap 10%. You can understand what kind of vote seat equation, how it is going to be hit. It is going to be for a top. That's why it is happening. The previous best was during the Mandir time when the upper caste and the OBC rallied for the BJP in Uttar Pradesh. For 20 years almost now, there was never a breach in the Dalit vote as far as the BSP was concerned. For the first time in 20 years, our data is revealing that there is a serious breach in the Dalit votes in Uttar Pradesh, and not only in Uttar Pradesh. In fact, this started with the assembly elections when we saw in Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, Dalits voted for the BJP.
I'd like to.
In Delhi, the Dalits voted for Aam Aadmi Party, and in UP this time, Dalit, just like you said,
One minute. Okay. We need to move on. We need to go to Bihar and Madhya Pradesh also. Ajay Bose said
But only 20-25%,
Yeah, can I
not too much.
Ajay Bose said
Yeah, can I quickly do a warning? Yeah, can I please?
Yes, sure, please.
Can I just please point out that Mayawati's two constituencies, one constituency has always been there with Dalits, and this time the constituency she hopes to get, both these constituencies do not participate in a very enthusiastic and vociferous manner in exit polls. Whatever people may say, exit poll.
Have exit polls gone wrong repeatedly vis-a-vis Mayawati?
They have gone repeatedly wrong.
Have they gone repeatedly?
They've always, she's always got less. She's always got less. She's always got less.
2007 was the one time when the polls predicted a Mayawati gain and substantial
And that was because of the Brahmins.
And that was powered by the upper caste.
When she was losing, she got 26%.
I say.
The exit polls said 26%.
I'm sorry.
All right, I said.
Only on the 16th we'll know.
Yashwant, where have you been? You're in your elements now for the first time I've seen in a long time.
Well, I was in South Africa analyzing their election.
You get your elections
got our
right
polls absolutely bang on target.
And the ANC was back, but I must say, no, 1 second, Yashwant. Everyone, South Africa, ANC return is far more expected than India, and even you will have to concede there wasn't any much of
Doesn't matter.
There I see it.
But we had our own element of Arvind Kejriwal in South Africa this time. You must look into that.
Just as a theoretical possibility with the vote percentages you've given, if we assume tactical voting has taken place, then projecting from vote share to actual seats may be difficult because you could have 10% differences in seats and yet get a very result.
Absolutely. That's why if the vote share would have been closer, it would have been a great challenge and a big headache for every pollster. Sure. But if you are looking at a 10% gap between BJP, Mulayam and Mayawati, then it's a, I mean, it is something which you are looking at as some kind of 96 or 91 election. This kind of a gap used to be there at that point of time. Congress is decimated. Certainly there is a tactical voting, but I totally agree with Ashok ji that Muslims by and large have remained with Mulayam Singh Yadav. Muslims have not deserted Mulayam Singh Yadav in this election. Not to that extent which everybody have been thinking of that, okay, they are going to leave.
That includes
certainly not on the basis of an exit poll.
Yeah, certainly.
I'll be ready to accept this on the 16th, but not certainly on the basis of an
now
exit
one big story today has been the impact. I don't know who is impacted at all or not by the exit polls. Politicians are never impressed, but the Sensex very impressed. And I'd like to go to Tina and Anand, who'll give us a quick update on that before we hit break number one.
Well,
Tina and Anand,
in fact, you know, one of the most tangible impacts that we've seen immediately of the exit polls has been on the markets, with the Sensex going past the 24,000 mark. In fact, Anand, an all-time high of 24,068.94.
This was somewhere towards the afternoon where it breached 24,000 and came back to stabilize around 23,871, which is phenomenal. And this has been the sentiment which has been there through the week. And if you look at the if you look at the NSE also breached the 7,100 mark and came down and stabilized.
All-time highs for both, and it must be said that these are largely driven by the domestic stocks. It's the domestic stocks like Larsen and Toubro, ONGC. These are the ones that have been driving the markets. It's all on the sense of the expectancy that's come through as a result of those exit polls. We're going to take a very short break and be right back. Do stay with us right here on the Poll of Polls.